All right, guys, we are back. Episode 27 of the Guest List podcast. I have here today Miss Anne Bernard. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous, Jake. And yourself?
I am doing excellent. Anne is the founder of the 365 First Challenge, and she is the podcast host as well under the same name. And she has a few other affiliates as well that deal with an app and a first coaching program. So I love the entrepreneurial spirit, and we get to dive into everything.
All right, fabulous. Bring it.
So first, let's just tell me about yourself and the audience. So just give us, a few-minute description of who Anne Bernard is, your history, and how you ended up in Vegas.
All right. Well, okay. We'll start from the beginning. I'll make it quick. I was born in Canada. We moved to Massachusetts when I was in 6th grade. At 17, I left home, joined the Marine Corps, turned 18 in boot camp. I spent 10 years on active duty in the Marine Corps. I did a tour in Iraq. I left the Marine Corps, and that's when I first started my entrepreneurial journey. So I went from life coaching to business coaching to starting a coaching agency. This was back in 2005. Way too early. Definitely, if you might know today what life coaching is, but remember 15 years ago, not so much. So, and I also had a really bad partnership. He had a partner really screw me over. So that ended the coaching agency. So then I turned around, and a week later, I was in Chipotle and I came up with another concept. So I started Why Go Solo. And Why Go Solo, I worked on that for a good 2 years. We released the website. So it was about connecting people from online to offline interaction, and it leveraged social media. Again, this is early 2006. The word social media was only known to a handful of people that played in that space. And I was in the DC, Northern Virginia area. I should have moved to Silicon Valley. I did not. And eventually I went broke and foreclosed on my townhouse. I'd lost everything with investing in the different businesses. Things weren't going very well. And then a friend of mine was like, hey, you're still in the inactive ready reserve for the Marine Corps. And I was like, no, I'm not. It's been 3 years. I haven't done anything with the Marine Corps. And he's like, you're still in. I'm like, no. We went back and forth for a little while, and he was correct. I was, in fact, still in the inactive ready reserve. So it took about a month, and I was back in uniform, which was very surreal because, like I said, I had joined at 17, did 10 years. So I was very, quote unquote, brainwashed in that time. But having gone out and pursued my entrepreneurial endeavors, that had definitely shifted and changed things a lot for me. So being back in uniform was very weird, but it was the best way for me to make some money and be around people, like a network of people that I knew, that understood, that supported me. And so that led me to moving from Northern Virginia to New Orleans. So I moved to the Big Easy, and I ended up spending 5 years there, and that was quite an adventure. New Orleans will always have an extremely special place in my heart. It's the voodoo that she do. That city is very special, but it also brought me down to my knees in that I had some additional failures. I put on a lot of weight, had a relationship go bad, and eventually it just broke me. I mean, all the failures, everything that I had been through, I was in a very dark place, suicidal, super angry. And once I hit down on my knees, gave my life to God, I ended up finding myself on this journey of first time and new experiences. I left New Orleans, got mobilized with the Marine Corps again, went to Germany, ended up going all over Europe. And while I'm in all these new places, I'm like, I should try new things while I'm in these new places. And that just opened life up for me. And I let go of all things entrepreneur and just started living life. And again, thankfully, the Marine Corps was there for me. And I kept getting promoted. I don't know why, but it happened. And so I when I left Germany the first time, I just traveled. I wrote, self-published a couple books, just kept traveling. I did this epic summer trip across Canada, the homeland. And then I ended up eventually going back to Germany And while I was there this last time, so it'd been 10 years since I'd done anything with, following entrepreneurial things. And while I love the traveling and love living life, I felt like I was not giving back to society. Like I was not, it was great for me, but I'm a person that likes to serve and that wants to make a difference and that wants to have an impact. And great to do that in the Marine Corps, but once my entrepreneurial spirit like raises to the surface, it clashes with the Marine Corps because they don't want to change how they do things. So I was getting very frustrated, and I started thinking about, well, what would my next business be? And it went back to, I've had such an incredible time having new experiences, and it has impacted my life so much. I would love to bring that and help people have that. So I was still in Germany. My sister got married second time here in Las Vegas. And I had been to Las Vegas before. I turned 21 because I was stationed in 21 Palms. So I turned 21 in Las Vegas. And so I come for her birthday and I start looking around. And one of the things in all my travels that had become very important to me was to be near mountains. I lived in Colorado for a little while. And obviously after going to Switzerland and Austria and the Alps and the Dolomite Mountains, the Rockies and Canada, like I had to be around mountains. So here, I'm here for her wedding. I start looking around, and it was that year, it was February a couple of years ago, and it snowed. It was like, why is it so cold here? And I'm looking around, I'm like, wait, Las Vegas is surrounded by mountains. Never noticed that before. Like, you know what? I could live here. So I went back, did a little bit more research, and it so happened when I was looking up the terms, first time, new experience, first experience of all the cities around the world, the one city associated with those terms, Las Vegas. People come here to have new experience. So it was like, ding, ding, ding. Perfect. If I'm going to gamble again, get back in the entrepreneurial thing, I know that I need to be in the right location. If I can get people sold on the 365 First Challenge on doing new things while they're in that mindset in Las Vegas, they'll pick it up here and then take it home with them. It's a great way for me to grow. So Las Vegas it was. I came back from Germany. I had stuff all over the place, packed all my belongings, and made my like 6th or 7th trip back across country from Massachusetts to here in Las Vegas. And I was really, next month will be a year that I've been living here, and it flew by. It really did.
Yeah.
So that's the short, long version of it all.
Well, first, I want to say that is an incredible story. There's a lot of trials and triumphs and errors that just flow through it. But one thing that I noticed that was continuous is that you continue to find the silver linings throughout your life and all these different experiences. And you were I guess you're first to the punch in a lot of these endeavors, like personal coaching. That was before like Tony Robbins made it big. And so a lot of people didn't really know what was going on. And like personal coaching didn't get popular until social media came around. And so then you're on social media in 2007. What's that? That's when MySpace was popular back then.
It was 2000. So it was 2006. So the Twitter was like 6 months old. Facebook was maybe a year, and we were connected to both of them. Like once you posted on Why Go Solo, it posted automatically to your Twitter feed and to your Facebook feed. And I was going around talking to different businesses, and especially like sports organization and bars and music, like all the venues, because like, hey, if people connect on my site, if they post a listing, say, hey, I want to go see this show and I need somebody to go with, that gets posted to somebody's newsfeed. And I'm like, you want to be in the newsfeed. You don't want to be on the sidebars. People are going to take advice. They're going to read the newsfeed, and that's the future. This was in 2006. Most of those places I'm going to don't even have websites. I'm selling them on a concept that was like,
yeah, that was way early back in the day. I remember I created Twitter back in 2009, and you still had to be able to text your tweets back in the day. So it's still, there was no retweets back then, no likes or anything of that nature. I think it was called
Yeah.
favoriting.
So it's funny enough, there's an app that's releasing, it might have just released, called Why Go Solo, with the same concept of connecting people from online to offline. And it's in 2020 and it's being released. And it's like, yeah, I was doing that in 2006. So
But also too, I think what's cool is that you were kind of stacking these different skill sets while you're doing this. You became, you knew how to become organized through the military and like find a routine, and then personal coaching. So you've learned how to connect people and find their different like subversive traits and how to make them better overall. And then social media after that. And so then it seems like that all of that combined is now what 365 is comprised of.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so so the personal coaching, as far as like the one-on-one, that didn't last very long because I move very fast. Like if I want to do something, I do it. Like I don't sometimes I jump in a little too fast, but I'm never gun shy. That's, no one can ever say, oh yeah, Anne's gonna, no, I just do. So it was hard for me to be a life coach because people are slow, like they make excuses. I'm like, I don't have time for this. And so one of the things that I definitely realized, I like running the business and I like being able to help others get to it, but ultimately, like what I like is the business concept. But it's really funny. Well, you can't see, especially if you're listening, you can't see.
You can if you're watching
But
this on YouTube, you can see.
so there's a sign. So there's the LGS coaching sign. There's my Why Go Solo. So when I set up my office, when I moved here, I decided to bring all the past businesses and have them in my office as a reminder. Because yes, I was ahead of time with all of those businesses. I picked up things and I learned from them. And I know with the 365 First Challenge, with the platform that I ultimately want to develop, it's going to be way ahead of its time as well, because the self-help industry has not changed in decades. It just hasn't. And I want to build something. What I'm envisioning, what I'm working on, is building something that uses machine learning and AI to really assist you in reflecting back who you are, the things that you've done, what it all means, and how to get you to keep growing, to keep moving. So it's going to be very action-based, very rooted on doing new things, but in capturing, because I always say you're the sum of your experiences, in capturing everything that you've done and it painting a picture back to you of what that means.
Yeah, it is very important to forecast on the future, but I think it is even more important to reflect on your past and see how you've grown. And it's funny, really funny that you say that, because in my podcast studio, I actually have my antique store banner. Next Gen Pickers was my first business, hung up there too. And Chameleon was a ticket verification app that I went around to. And so I wake up and I look at those, and I think that, maybe overall it was a failure as far as it wasn't sustainable or financially lucrative, but the different things that you learn along the way helps you and pushes you forward to the different businesses and ventures down the road.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's nothing, like, I'm proud of those businesses, even though they ended up being failures. I'm proud that I came up with the concept and I did it, and definitely learned a lot from it. And I remember with Why Go Solo, because I was pitching to angel investors and to VC, and I kept being asked, like, who are you to get this done? So now, I was about to go hit the circuit to raise money, but then COVID hit. But I was definitely ready for that question of somebody asking me, who are you to do this?
Yeah, venture capital now is almost in the same realm as entrepreneurship, where people just build a business and now they like kind of just seek out venture capital right in the beginning, whether it might be a good or bad thing, but it has become mainstream as well. So it's interesting. I hope that does work out for you. I don't know too much about it from personal experiences, but I do follow a bunch of the tech entrepreneurs and investment firms and stuff like that. And it could be a double-edged sword. going down that road.
Yeah, and I think it's going to actually take a little while for the money to really come back until really the pandemic is over and everything's stabilized. So I've had to pivot, and I'm going to continue down that pivot. So definitely building the community and then going more into the crowd funding route, I think is going to be a better road. So that way I can get further along. And if I can make it without having to raise money, that's definitely the ideal. But because of the technology that, again, I'm envisioning, it's going to cost quite a bit to get that developed and tested and have it be at the quality level that I want it. So it's, yeah, sometimes like, I love thinking about it because it inspires me. And sometimes I think about it, I'm like, oh, this is exhausting.
Yeah, it's like a mix of eager, and then like there's a lot of triumph and you can see the success, but you know that there's still thousands of steps in between where you need to go. And like you said too, multiple pivots. And speaking on pivots, tell me what the experience was like. Once you got out the military, you started becoming an entrepreneur, and then you had to go back to the military. What was that experience like?
It was interesting because although I always had entrepreneurial blood running through my veins, I mean, and when I was a kid, I used to actually lay in bed and think up a business. And my parents were entrepreneurial, but more like on the traditional routes, like restaurant, arcade. So I was like 6, 7 years old, working in arcade and working in restaurants and selling sodas, like in the stands, and popcorn. And so always definitely a strong work ethics and exploring doing your own thing. So I always knew I wanted to be a Marine. I always knew I wanted to be a Marine Corps officer because I wanted my own platoon and I wanted to lead Marines. But when it was time for me to get out, because I wasn't having fun anymore, they weren't going to send me where I wanted to go. And it was time to, open up that new chapter. And and then going to college felt like a failure, but going back to the Marine Corps, I was very happy that it was there, but this was in 2006. So it was the election it was during the election year.
Okay.
And I was around a lot of people that didn't get, what Obama was running for. Then, because in the military, you're taking, like, your healthcare is taken care of, you have all of that. And it was like, as an entrepreneur and having to pay for that, not having those things shifted things. Like, was like, wait, you don't understand what it's like. And so I would get into political arguments with some of the folks around the office, and then the boss would come out, and that's not, we're not supposed to talk politics. But I knew it wasn't, like, it was a temporary thing. And it was tough to be back in there and work for bosses that were kind of idiots. And it was just like, this is not what I want to do anymore. But I learned over time. So part of my faith was understanding that you need to serve and do the best, any position that you're in, no matter what, whether or not you like the job, whether or not you like the people that you work around, you give it your all and you perform at the highest level possible. So it was a great opportunity for me to apply that and to do it. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm still very happy to be in the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps is not perfect. I mean, I always had some doozies as bosses.
Yeah, people are imperfect. And I think what's happening now just has highlighted it even more, and people are a little bit more aware that a lot of the structures and organizations that have been around for hundreds of years or lots of decades, they have a lot of their misfortunes as well, and a lot of hiccups along the way. So it's like you said, you kind of just have to prepare for it or buckle down. And I do think that what's interesting is that I was highlighting is that it's almost like a clash of ideologies when you had to go back, right? Like the entrepreneur is a little bit free spirited. They want to be their own boss. There's so much up and downs that are along the way. Whereas I think the military is a little bit more linear because it's a strict organizational structure that people tend to follow more often. And it's like my way or the highway where.
Yeah. And it got complicated as I moved, like I said. So when I first went back in uniform, I was a captain, right? So there were a lot of people senior than me. So I
Mhm.
had to go back to that mindset. And when I put the uniform back on, it was kind of a download of what it means to be a Marine, good order and discipline, a chain of command, and all of that. But as I kept moving up in rank, that got complicated. So when I put the uniform back on and now I'm a lieutenant colonel, it's like, yeah, no. That was very different. And that's when I realized I might not. And I can usually last for a while to where I can be, I can be Lieutenant Colonel Bernard. But if I go too long, then it becomes too much. And especially if I encounter people that just are not open-minded, that don't want to look into different ways of doing things and new options. And that's where I kind of got to that point. And the reason why I knew it was time to go back out and do my own thing, is if I'm going to work this hard, quite frankly, it's going to be for my own thing, because I'm not going to lose sleep, get gray hairs, and be stressed to do something at the level that I want to do it when everybody else around me might not care, as much as I care. And I just realized I am the type of person, I am a workaholic. Work means a lot to me. It needs to be meaningful and have a purpose. And I do want to commit myself to it. So it needs to be something that I truly care about, that I can give my all to. And that's the entrepreneurial way. That's
Purebred. That's a purebred.
yeah.
It was just like it was tangled up inside of you, and it was just ready to get out. And
Yeah.
yeah, before we move on to the next topic, I'm curious. What you're in there for 24 years. What was it like being a woman of a higher rank in the Marine Corps? Did you see? Were you treated any different? Was there any sort of irregularities that you faced along the way?
Definitely. Things have changed a lot. I find it very interesting. So back when I started a group called Actionable Change, back when the oh God, what was it called? Marines United fiasco came out, because it got me really ticked off. Like, women throughout history, since World War I, when women started serving in the military, and certainly in the last 20 years, because women have been on the front line in Iraq. And to have a group trying again to minimize women in the military and what we can do just really ticked me off.
Of course, of course.
And so I started the group, so that, because now that I was a lieutenant colonel and my peers were lieutenant colonels, and there were battalion commanders and starting to take command and having a say in big impacts, like, we need to speak. We need to continue to change things so the younger generations don't have to keep doing what we've done. Like, I didn't pay our dues for the next generation to keep having to pay their dues. Like, enough, we've paid our dues. But what I find fascinating, like, when I grew up in the Marine Corps, my peers almost never saw me out of uniform. Like, I only wanted them to see me as a Marine. And the other part of who I was, I never got to express those. Well, the new generation now in the Marine Corps, they get to express who they are in and out of uniform, especially with social media. And so it's a completely different environment for them to have to merge those two together. I wasn't merging myself. I was just a Marine. Like, I came
Mhm.
across as a Marine, and that was it. So there's a lot more going on now, and it's still a battle. And I'm passing the baton on to some others, because again, my calling is elsewhere. And I know they're going to keep fighting that good fight to keep, and I love that all jobs are open to women, and women are stepping into those roles. It's not many, but those that are proving that, yeah, women can do that. And they do it at the same standard as the men are doing it. They might not be able to do it as long, there's still certain limitations, but they're there and they're doing it. And we bring a lot of other things to the table, and it's been a constant battle to do that. So personally, I always fought those battles. I started lifting. I hit the gym. Like, at 16, like, when I knew I was joining the Marine Corps, I went to the gym. And this is in 1993, 94. you didn't see women on, in the weight room. You just didn't. So a couple of the guys from the football team happened to be there. They took me under their wing. So they taught me how to lift. And, I would get Muscle and Fitness magazine. There weren't women in the magazine. You had women bodybuilders, but they were very underrepresented all around. But it didn't occur to me that women were missing. I just knew that, hey, this is what I wanted to do. And so, and lifting weights, because I had an eating disorder as a kid, so lifting weights made a huge difference. And I got to be strong. Like I could do pull-ups long before women were required to do pull-ups. And so, because I always knew, like, I need to be able to handle myself, handle my own body weight. If I have to fight someone, want to know how I'm able to do it. So I was out to, make my way. And first, so 29 Palms, California, the base there, massive base, a lot of infantry units. And when I went to the gym, like, hey, get out of my way. I had the mindset of, I belong here. And people did get out of my way. Like, it was just, it is on how the mood that you set. When I was discriminated against, I always spoke out. That's why I say I'm surprised I kept getting promoted, because I was not the quiet one. I was the one that always spoke up. I always wanted to be able to look myself in the mirror and be proud of me and having done the right thing, which meant, yeah, there's a lot of times where I was crying, I was hurt, I was alone, I was upset, but no point did I not live up to, who I expected myself to be. And
to stand out, I think it comes down to your mindset, right? Like, obviously, men and women, they have physical differences, but I think we're more closely related in a mental capacity. And if you have to stand your ground in some sort of way where you're quote unquote outmanned, you have to show that you can equate or be level or more level-headed than them on a mental capacity level. And that's exactly what you did. And I think that's what your superior saw as well. That's why you kept getting promoted.
Yeah. I mean, when it's holding, I've been in stare down contests to where it's just, it's a power of will. And so it's funny because, so last time I went back to Germany, so lieutenant colonel. Well, there's another lieutenant colonel in the office, and we ended up having, like, both our desks were in the back of the office. And this guy, former recon Marine, just typical Marine, and he ate like crap, but he was shredded, and he's in his 40s and, high tight. And so we get in there, and of course we size each other up, and he tried to push me around and I pushed back. So there's some yelling matches that ensued. And people would walk in and walk back out. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm not getting in the middle of this. And, over time, we actually stopped yelling and started communicating and realized, like, there's nobody I've met in my life that's more like me and more different than me. So we found some common ground, and we still had some arguments, and, he's special in a lot of ways. But it was just interesting, because it was like, okay, I'm not going to be pushed around, and he's going to test me. And, like, yeah, spent my entire career being tested. It's not a big deal. And I was doing a job I had never done, had no clue. And I stood in front of the general and the staff, and I told them, like, hey, I'm going to deliver the best exercise you've ever had, and these are going to be my expectation. And, one of the major that was there, she's like, I've never seen anyone do anything like that before. And I had the chief of staff, he's like, did you even know how to do any of this? And I was like, nope. I knew I was going to get it done. Yeah.
Learning on the go. It's also too, it's like the quote that they say, where you keep your allies close, but your enemies even closer, because a lot of times you're more similar to the people who are opposing you than the people who are on your side, because you are on the same wavelength with them. Yeah. It's just you're trying to go for two separate outcomes or for a finite amount of resources. And in the military, it's probably for some sort of position of power.
Yeah. But the getting it done and learning as you go, that's the entrepreneurial mindset, because to the chief of staff who's not used to having somebody who's like, you don't make any sense. I'm like, I don't worry about not knowing how to do something. I'll figure it out. Like I have spent my entire life pretty much, one, because all I do is first time in new experiences. They're all things I've never done before. I have to figure it out. As an entrepreneur, you're constantly having to enter into new technology, new concept, different people, different circumstances, and you've never been in that. And like, well, you have to figure it out. That's the only way you're gonna survive and you're gonna make it. So
Yep. Fail forward, fail fast, fail often. That's what Warren Buffett goes by. That's something that I've always the quote that kind of hit me when I was in college, of just going out and doing first new experiences. And it's funny actually when I came across you that yours is first time experiences, because a quote that I always lived by in college is that I'll try anything twice. That was always my motto, because I always felt like first time experiences, sometimes that you're either peer pressured into doing something by, your friend brings you along to something, or you go skydiving, you don't want to, or your parents are pushing you to go somewhere. So I felt like the first time experiences sometimes are not the most accurate relative reading for yourself, because you have some sort of external force that's kind of pushed on you. So I always try to do things twice. And then the second time around, since it's a little bit more familiar, if you actually like that or not. But it's funny that you say first time experiences, because I think there's a lot of subjectiveness that surrounds it. Because
well, I think if you have the mindset that you're going to
Mhm.
make the best out of your first experience, so even if somebody is forcing you into it or subjecting you to it, then you're like, well, I'm going to make the most out of it, right?
Mhm.
So that way it is always the best that it can be. And then you can make the decision to try again or not try it again. And it's been a really long time since I've been peer pressured to anything.
Yeah, you see, you
So,
probably grew past it once you did multiple first time experiences. You're just like, wow, now I want to take it all on.
yeah. I had an experience when I was a kid. I don't know if you heard me tell this story or not, but I got locked in the bathroom with my worst fear, which was a spider, when I was 9 years old. And I just went nuts. So my stepmom locked me in there, and there was no coming out till I killed the spider. And as I'm just in my hysteria of fear, uh, calm came over me, and a voice spoke to me and said, you can be trapped by your fears, or you can be freed by facing them. So after I heard that, I turn around like, okay, I gotta kill this spider, because I'm locked in with my fear, and this is not where I want to be. So I killed the spider, and I was set free. And at 9 years old, I'm like, I'm going to live my life facing all my fears. So first it was the mentality of facing them, but being who I am, I'm like, nah, I'm going to chase after them. Just like, and so I went chasing after my fears. And then I got to a point where, I'm not afraid. As a matter of fact, if I am afraid, I treasure it. I love it. Like I'm on the other side of fear, to where fear makes me feel alive. It makes me more in the moment, more focused. So when I went skydiving, of course, I'm in this tiny little plane, and there's the fear of the unknown, the fear of doing this. Although at that point, I'm 40 years old, I've had an amazing life. And like, if I don't make it, I told the guy, like, if we don't make it, I've done everything I ever wanted to do. I'm kosher with this. I'm good to go. But I also knew that as soon as we were out of the plane, the fear would disappear, get replaced by adrenaline. So I savored it. Like I tasted the moment, because it'd been so long since I had that much fear. It's like, it was like a high. It was like, this is awesome. And most people don't look at fear that way, because like everything else I've done. And if any type of fear ever, so I was sorry, I jumped from one story to another.
You're okay.
I was going up this church. I forget which country I was in, but I'm going up this church, and as I'm going up to the steeple, like my palm got sweaty and I started shaking, and my heart rate went up, and I'm like, I don't have a fear of height. Like what's happened? Like my body's having a reaction that my mind's like, no, we don't do this. So I get to the top, and and I'm like, this is fear. So I'm looking around. I'm like, this is weird. As I'm walking, when I walk back down, then I feel like those fear behaviors of my body go away. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to do this. So then I decided to go do Via Veredas in the Dolomites. And so you're going up the, I mean, you're strapped in, but you're going like way up the mountains. So as I'm going up the mountain, I'm looking around and I'm like, I didn't have the same physical reaction to fear. And I'm like, I'm not, I don't have a fear of heights. So I don't, like, to this day, I'm like, what was that whole thing about? Um, so I'm like, oh, I might never know. But if there's anything that creeps in that creates a like, oh, this kind of scares me, then I have to do it. So I will be learning how to fly for that very reason.
Yeah, we put up a lot of mental walls for no reason, and that's something that entrepreneurs face pretty much every day, where you have to do something new, first time experience, signing up for a business, or you have to go back to fill out 400 different applications for some reason that you have no idea, or meeting new people. It's about it's more of like stacking skills. And so it makes me curious, would you say that the first time challenge, it's more about conquering fear and becoming more comfortable with being uncomfortable, or is it more about just trying something new and seeing if you have maybe a new interest?
So it's that and much more. So it's the ultimate like self-development process. So the benefits of first time in your experiences expand. Yes, stepping out of your comfort zone, facing your fears, but it's also about constantly learning. So working on your cognitive abilities and doing your neuroplasticity, like rewiring your brain so that you become a faster learner. So the more things that you learn, the more first times that you do, then you're rewiring your brain and you're getting more used to it. So motor function, doing things with your hands. So I went and did archery, and then I went axe throwing. Well, while they're different, they have similarities, and they have similarities with shooting, with firing a weapon. So all of those things your brain make, if you give them exposure, your brain makes different connections. And as you're making those connections, and with your body, mind, spirit, like all of those connections, you improve who you are, you grow who you are, and you become more efficient at things that you might actually have never yet done. So that's why I want people to go on the journey, have those experiences, so you have the moments where you're like, I'm learning this much faster than I've ever learned anything. I've never done this. Why do I feel more comfortable and already familiar with it? So that you're building up and you're constantly improving who you are. And if you are stepping out of your comfort zone and facing your fears, then obviously you're raising your self-awareness. You're going to change a lot of different things about you, and you have more of a willingness to say yes instead of no, to engage with life. So ultimately, it's about maximizing what you gain out of living. And you'll learn to become more spontaneous, more willing to say, yeah, instead of no. I'll be like, yeah. And it could be at work where you've never led a team and the opportunity comes. And because you've been doing other first times outside your life, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And so it is really a journey. That's why I tell people you're going on a journey of first time in your experiences, and it will change your life. It will change your relationship with life, and you'll get to see it has so much to offer. And it's in day to day, like today, this is like, I'm anti bucket list. It's not about having, you can absolutely, like, I've been to 41 countries, and I have many more countries to visit, and they're on my 365 first challenge list. So learning how to fly, that's a pretty big thing. Learning to play the piano, learning to play the guitar. So I have bigger things on my list that are like, there'll be multiple first times. There'll be the first time I fly with an instructor, the first time I fly by myself. There'll be like first times build up. So you have to do the first, and then you can go to the next level with your different firsts. But it's going, it's a mindset switch, so that you are always looking for what is next. What have I not done in, a variety of areas in your life, in your hobbies, and you're constantly like building, and you never stop growing. You never become stagnant in your life. And that engagement with life, it helps you and you're releasing dopamine as you're doing that. It helps you battle uh, depression. It's really, for as we're all aging, it's really good for our brain, so it battles dementia and Alzheimer, it's just win-win-win. There's no drawbacks
Yeah.
to adding more first time and new experiences to your life.
So there is a scientific reason behind this. You know, it's not as much spiritual as what I thought of in the beginning. You touched on something about neuroplasticity and rewiring the brain. Can you touch a little bit more on that topic?
Yeah, so our brains, so they used to believe that after our teenage years, like your brain was forming, that was it. But it turns out that over the last few years, they've discovered that no, your brain keeps pruning itself, where if you're not using a skill, you're not doing certain things, it kind of dies on the branch and then it gets taken away. So in order to keep things firing, the neurotransmitter in your brain firing, you need to engage your brain. And your brain is lazy. And it's a good thing that your brain is lazy because it's looking to be the most efficient. So let's say that it lights up when you learn something. So people say like, oh, I do Sudoku, it's good for my brain. Right? It's only good while you're learning how to do Sudoku, because then the brain's looking to figure out how to do it. And once it knows how to do it, it kind of quiets down. It's like, okay, I have the pathway. When you do this, I do that. So the only way to light it back up is that you have to do something new. And now the brain kind of fires back up. It's like, whoa, I've never done this before. What is this about? And then it's going to search for similar experiences to make a connection or relation to something else. And if it doesn't find it, then it has to build that pathway. But once it's built a pathway, again, it'll go back out and be like, oh, okay. So you have to keep engaging your brain that way. And when you stack, we kind of have a manifesto in the 365 First Challenge, which is to rack and stack. And that's one of the things that I want to like prove to myself. So it's like, how many things can I learn at once to enhance my ability to learn? Because again, the brain is lazy. It's going to find the most efficient way to learn. And so if I'm learning a lot of different things, it's going to find, like, I don't have to find the similarities. The brain does that. And that's why, like, you get to turn around after you do this a lot and just be amazed by what your brain is capable of doing. And it's the experience that I've had. And every time it just amazes me. It's just like, whoa, we are beautifully made, and the brain, they still don't have it figured out. But a lot of the fallacies are gone. Like people are like, well, the right brain, left brain, that's gone. The circuits go back and forth in your mind, and you can have a head injury and it grows back and another part of your brain picks up the weight. And, there's a lot of beautiful things that can happen, but you need to be active in generating those processes, and then you get to reap the benefits.
Yes, I think from what you were saying about the rush and when your brain fires off all these different neural pathways when you do something new for the first time, I think that's what explains why everyone feels so energized when you do something for the first time, because your brain's in an unfamiliar territory. So it sends a lot of, I guess, shocks to different parts of the brain.
Well, it releases dopamine. So
Yes.
novelty releases dopamine, and that dopamine is that feel good neurochemical that once you're done, you feel like you're on this high and you're like, man, I want to do this again. I want to learn everything there is about it. And then that feeling numbs down as the dopamine kind of, goes away. And so, but it's one of those things, they talk about dopamine because, if you're on your phone, you're on social media and you get the little dopamine hits, and that's what brings you back to those things. Well, when you do something new, then you get the massive dopamine hit. So instead of spending an hour on your phone, go spend an hour learning something new, and you're going to feel a lot better for it. And your brain will be much better for it because your brain's not learning anything while you're on your phone, just, swiping
It's
through social media.
mindless scrolling.
Exactly. It
Yeah,
doesn't
and
have benefits.
if you could get that dopamine hit through something that's not an external source or substance, like a lot of people in Vegas do when they indulge, in substance abuse, where that's just like a constant release of dopamine. I think if it's natural, it probably you probably recover much faster as well, and you don't have that like lagging feeling or a hangover, some might say.
Correct. You don't crash from it. You feel energized from it. You feel excited. You feel inspired. You feel motivated. So for me, the reason why I use first times and building up on the first time is that I want that next hit. And just so, and once you start training the release of dopamine that way, then you get excited for your next first. You're like, well, I'm going to put in the hard work to achieve that. And then it's the excitement of just the perception of getting that releases dopamine. So then you can start having the right triggers in place that keep you that keep you motivated to keep working towards your goal, towards having those new first times.
You have me motivated to do a bunch of first things first now. Do you have a recommendation on like where a good places to start as far as an activity or skill to learn? Is there like a common starting point?
No, I think, I mean, the app is a good starting point, because if you
Mm-hmm.
download it and you can pick the different categories and just swipe, so the stuff might come up that you've never even thought of, that, there's a chores section on there. So just doing chores around the house that you've never done is actually going to give you a dopamine hit, and it might be very interesting, and you're developing a new skills. But since, and I know Las Vegas is open and there's certain places that you can go, so that's an option. But there's so much that you can do at home, and just craft and hobbies and music, dancing, just learning anything new, of being exposed to new things. I did last Friday, I did a tutting class.
What
So
is tutting?
it's dancing with your arms and hands. And
Hmm.
so that was awesome, because it required, so it's dancing, so one, getting a workout, two, it requires coordination. And as you're learning the moves and the routine, you have to remember it. So it's like engaging parts of my brain that day to day, as I'm doing the entrepreneurial grind, to some respect, like I don't do. So I was pretty tired, because it's Friday. It was Friday at 4 p.m., and just during the week, and you're working 12, 14-hour days. And when that came, I was like, ah. But as soon as we got started, and, right away, just the energy went up. And afterwards, I was on a high. Like, I was like, this was so fun. It's so exciting. And of course, it's the same thing, like, I want to learn more of it. And so I did a ASL sign language, a lot of things with my hands. Like for me, I like doing a lot of things with my hands, because coordination, so I'm learning how to juggle. So things that engage coordination and eye hands movement. I need to get back on my mountain bike, 'cause that's another very good that's another very good body eye brain eyes movement. But that's important to me. uh, so it depends what's important to you. And one of the other things this journey has taken me on, so as a kid, I'm hitting the weight room already, joined the Marine Corps. So being outdoors, being active, doing sports, always what I defaulted to. When it came to crafts or doing anything with decorations or music, somewhere along the way, I was like, that's not for me. And since I started this journey, I realized that I might have not had any fears, but I had self-limiting beliefs. So now I'm tackling those and painting and doing arts. And I need to, I have a room. It's almost been a year that I'm supposed to turn into a craft room that I haven't done yet. That I need to finish that so I can do more crafts. And if you haven't gone there, the glass blowing, the torch blowing, you work with glass and you make wine screw toppers. That's a awesome, like, I can send you the details for that. That's an
Yes.
awesome, because there's a danger factor because you like get this 3000 Fahrenheit torch that you're working with, and then you're kind of mesmerized by the melting glass, and you're like, that's glass and it's melting, and you have to move really fast because it's melting really fast. And that's a great first. And I took my stepmom, and afterwards, same thing. She was just on this high, and she's like, that was so relaxing, like, because you're so focused, your thoughts all go away. And so it's better than doing, meditation, because when you're meditating, you're trying to get rid of your thoughts. When you're focusing on not burning yourself and creating something, you're really focused. So it depends, like, align with your interests and step out of things you might never have considered doing before. That was a really long answer.
It's completely okay. I could feel your passion literally through the computer screen. It just sounds like you have to start small. Start preferably with chores. Maybe read
in the kitchen, like just a cooking. Like that's I keep like eggs. Eggs is a perfect example. Have you made each and every kind of eggs there is out there? Have you poached an egg? Have you scrambled an egg? Have you boiled an egg? And there's so many others, and it's just like, no, I've never poached an egg. So you're gonna have to do a little research. How do you do it? You might have to work with some things, tools in the kitchen you've never worked with, and there you go. I mean, that's the first time, and then hopefully you enjoy it.
It's a unique mindset, because a lot of times we go through these routines that we have and we don't even realize that we may be doing something for the first time. It's just like, it's kind of just standard. And, humans, we like to not do things that are new. We like to just, eat the same few meals a day, or, watch the same TV shows 10 times in a row, whatever the case is. But you can even expand that to watching different shows on Netflix, trying out new genres, like reading different genres of books. Like I'm predominantly a nonfiction reader, but one of the first times I read a fiction book recently, I ended up reading 2 or 3 more fiction books afterwards, because I was like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. And so you don't even realize sometimes that you are going through these trials of first-time experiences, but your mind and your brain is reacting towards it even without realizing it.
And when you become conscious, then you get to reap the benefits even more. And it's one of those things, once you do go on this journey, you become a lot more aware of what's happening in your day. What did I get exposed to today that was different, that had an impact, instead of just taking it for granted, because you don't get that first again. That's it. It's like, first time's the first time. Once you've had the first, you can't relive it. So if you're not present in the moment that you're living it, you're kind of missing out on it. So that's definitely a big part of it, is raising the awareness of what you are doing day to day and what's coming into your life.
Yep, awareness and consciousness. I really do like that. And so with the 365 first challenge, once you get past those first steps of awareness, consciousness, and just understanding, is the next step taking action?
Well, yeah. So in the process, you are taking action. So you'll become more aware, and then when you'll create opportunities, and when the opportunity comes, you'll be like, yes, because you'll be like, I don't know how this is going to pan out, and this might scare me, this might worry me, but it's a first. I want to have my first, right? So one of the quote, and I'm going to mess it up, like, so you don't need courage when you have curiosity, right? So if you reconnect with your childlike curiosity, so when you're a kid, you're trying things out all the time, because you weren't afraid, you were curious, you wanted to know what's on the other side of this. What is this all about? What would I get out of doing this? So as adults, we lose that. If the process of the 365 first challenge, your journey, first time in your experiences, you're reconnecting with that curiosity. So you don't have to worry about being brave or courageous, because you're not thinking about that. You're thinking, oh, I want to do it. I want to try it. And again, in the manifesto and the things, in the community, so we have our own language and the things, but one of the things that we understand, it's the first time. And we say, we rather make a fool of ourselves, look like an ass, than not try. Or we rather fail than not try. We want to have the experience. And so when you're surrounded by people also that have that mindset, you adopt that mindset, there's so much more that you're going to do, and that's going to come into your life.
Huh, I like that. So you have action. And then as far as the challenges goes, is that mostly found through the app, or is it kind of a referral system?
So the challenge is, so the 365 first challenge. So the challenge, so when I named it, I went with challenge because I didn't want it to be 365 first time. It's
It's
not the
like too
360.
vague, yeah.
Yeah, and the 365, it's not like it's a number it's a known number, days in the year, but
Mhm.
it's not about doing a first time every day. It really is about a community and a mindset. So the challenge is looking at what you do either as a challenge, as an opportunity, you know, choose like what your terminology that you relate and connect with that speaks to you, and share with me, like I'm curious. But the reason, so, and then it's a hashtag 365 first challenge because I do want it to become a community, so that when you click on the hashtag across social media, it takes you to all the other first times people are doing, what they're learning from them, maybe the difficulties that they're having. And then if you have an unexpected first, so I go through and there are like 5 types of first. If you have an unexpected first, which is something you hadn't planned, you probably don't want happening. So like, but they happen. So somebody dying or having, getting a bad news from the doctors or whatever it might be, being able to use that hashtag for unexpected first and have a community saying, hey, we're here for you. We'll see you through it. What you do with all first time is the same. Learn more about it. What are the actions that you can take? So it's like, it's building a mindset of, well, when I'm going to do something for the first time, I know how to plan, I know how to do it. No matter what the outcome happens to be, I know how to emotionally cope with it and make the best of it. So it totally is. And that's what eventually the platform will teach. Right now, the app, you just make your list, but eventually all of those lessons and what it's all about will become part of the platform.
I like that. And what would separate your community from, let's just say, me just going out and doing first time things on myself and documenting it in a journal? What would separate your community and make me encouraged to join it?
It's to be part of a community. I mean, if you want to do it, like I did it on my own for, 7, 8 years. So, I mean, it's great to have a community because they understand what you're going through and you're connecting. So the Next Level First coaches, it's a team that I've brought together and I taught them. So I everything that we're talking about is all part of a 6-week Maximize Your Journey program, where we literally teach, how to use first time to raise your self-awareness, to be more spontaneous, to capture, master your thought process, face your fears, and all of that. And you get coaching around that, so that when you struggle, when you have a tough time, when you have victories, you have coaches, you have a community to talk to, so that you move faster, right? So that's why I always love life coaching, is because it is about, it wasn't for me because I move at a very fast pace, but it's great for a lot of people because they will move you faster. So the community is so that you get those benefits and you go to the next level and you go to the next level, so that you achieve things you never ever thought even possible. And that ultimately, for me, this is all about raising human potential. So if I get people to break the loops that they're in, and I get them to be a lot more open-minded, a lot more to a growth mindset, a lot more to taking actions, then we can change the world, because people are what make the world go round and round. And if more people are engaging with life, things will look very different.
Yes, that brings innovation when people are just skill stacking, doing these different experiences. Things become so niche down to that specific person that they end up going and creating that next $1 billion company or starting that nonprofit that saves or ends world hunger, or just like something very, very simple, you know, like
Yep.
different tools to help assist in podcasting or just connection. There's all kinds of different things. And I kind of envision your idea as like a spider web. And something that I've always said all the time is like, there's so many inflection points in life and there's so many different disciplines that you can go down, but any single thing can be connected to each other. You just kind of have to find where that point is. And the best way to do that is to start at the outer edge of the spider web and find the longest ring first, and then it just becomes more refined as you go down the road.
Yeah. And because creativity is another huge benefit and byproduct, like you said, of innovation, of exposure to new experience, exposures to new skills. And once more, your brain is going to make those connections. So your creativity will increase even with you without being aware of it. All of a sudden you become a better problem solver because you've been exposed to more things, and that exposure opens up your mind and you've made those connections like, well, this could be great with this. And never before had you made that connection, or nobody else might have ever made that connection, because your experiences are unique, the way you process the experiences are unique. And if you're staying in your stagnant life, then that will never, that will never open up in your world. So you have to go forth and explore and discover, so that that magic can take place.
And that's something that too you have been discovering more, is kind of how we found each other through podcasting, right? And you started your podcast relatively recently, correct?
Yeah, so I first started the 365 First podcast in April of 2019. So when I was coming, when I was first doing the 365 First challenge, but then between the move and the madness, kind of got paused for 6 months, and I picked it back up and really went hard fast with it starting in January of this year. So I'll have 100 episode at the end of this month. So
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I hope I can land on that exact episode. How pivotal has the podcast been as far as progressing this movement and positive mindset mentality?
Fortunately, it hasn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Really interesting.
The podcast is not. It's not taking off like I would like it to. There's such great content on there, and well, as you know, finding your audience and because everything about my business is stuff for this very reason, right? Because everybody's like, well, what's your avatar? Like for you, you're in Las Vegas and you're interviewing entrepreneurs. Very niche, very specific, so you know who to look for. Well, when we talk about the journey, first time in your experiences, it's for everyone, right?
Yeah, actually.
And so that is the worst thing you can do in business, is have something that's for everyone. You need to have your niche, you need to have your avatar. And unfortunately, I do not have that. So people who are already into adventure, they'll come across the 365 First Challenge or the podcast and be interested in it, but they're already living their lives that way. Those who are like, the switch is not turned on, well, they're not looking for that content. So, then how do you expose them to the content and turn the switch on and then engage them with it? So I have not quite cracked that that nut yet. So which is why this month I'm doing the 10,000 download scavenger hunt, to just get out there and get people to get interested in the content. So I ask a question and the answer is in one of the episodes. Hopefully there's one question that's going to strike somebody and say, yeah, I'm curious about that. And they'll go look for the answer. And so it's a constant, and we're renaming the 365 First Challenge Facebook group to staying the same name, but becoming the anti-bucket list community, because people understand the bucket list concept. So if it's the anti-bucket list, it might, again, be like, what does that mean? And have a curiosity of learning more about it. But it's a challenge.
Yeah, you'll find your niche. I'm a big proponent for the trial and error mindset. Is that you don't know if it works until you actually try it. And the majority of things that you do try probably won't be successful in the beginning, but sometimes you have to keep digging and keep reassessing every week, every 2 weeks, every 2 months. It's an interesting find. And as long as, like you said, you have a growth mindset, there's many pivots that you can turn almost any day. It just depends on how you're feeling and how your audience, you said, is reacting.
Yeah. So I'm always trying new ways of appealing to the audience, finding the audience, who they are. When I was doing the in-person 365 First Challenge meetup groups, I got really surprised because I had people in their 70s show up, and I was like, this is not who I thought was going to come out. And even so, I started a 365 First Challenge meetup group in Alexandria because one of my coaches there. And right away, I had a lady from a church, and she's like, "Hey, I run this group. We were like 55 years and older." And she's like, "I love what you're doing." And I'm like, "Okay, like if that's my people, then that's my people. I would like to bring in the younger generation to get them more into, because you think, when you're a teenager in your 20s, you think you're very open-minded and you're out to try things. But I don't care what generation you're in, society gets you. Once you get in the workplace and you fall in line, and just about everybody does, then you're going to wake up somewhere in your 30s and 40s, and you're going to be like, okay, what happened? What went down? Like a decade, 15 years, went by. And so I'm trying to keep people woken up to what life has to offer through going through those other phases of life. But certainly when people get in their 40s and 50s, I think they come to a realization of, okay, there's got to be more than what I'm doing, what I have been doing. And then they seek me out in the things that I do.
Do
So.
you think there's a conflicting ideal, since the majority of your demographic right now is a little bit older? Wouldn't they come in with a bucket list mindset instead of an anti-bucket list?
Yeah, so they are more in the bucket list mindset, but once I talk to them about what the 365 First Challenge is about, then sorry about that, then they do kind of, they're like, oh, well, I hadn't thought about it that way. And they're at the age where battling dementia and Alzheimer's, you have to kick that into high gear, so that you can fight that off, and your plasticity is that much more important. And they might, so if they're chasing those big destination bucket list items, they're missing out on what they can do today to keep things fresh and keep their brains engaged and still discovering more of what life has to offer. But the beauty is, if they have kids and grandkids, they can share with them what they're doing and still pass it to the next generation. But I think when I can have the money and switch the platform and get more into still making your list, but more into the self-development, connect with people, do things, and like have the app. So let's say you made your list and you've never had Thai food, and you're walking around and it's like, hey, you know, you want to have lunch, and it tells you the nearest Thai restaurant to go to, so you can cross that first off. So when life goes back to whatever it goes back to, that, and I have more technology in the platform and more capabilities, then I'll draw the younger crowd, because it'll be more on the self-development. So that will pivot how I market things again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When we go back to whatever is this new normal, there is going to be a plethora of anti-bucket list things to do, because all of the traditional routines are just going to be broken in shambles, and there's going to be so much opportunity out there for
Yeah.
everybody.
And I mean, when I moved to Las Vegas, my goal was to get embedded in Las Vegas, so that, you get off the plane in Las Vegas and it's like, what new experience do you want to have in Las Vegas? Download the 365 First Challenge app. And then it would be like your go-to app in Las Vegas to have all those new experiences, and then take to whatever next city you go to, or, back home with you. So I really want to be very engaged with the city, and the COVID kind of
Yeah, took a little
Feel
dump for a
that.
little bit.
Yeah.
Do you, do you,
So
do you think with the 365 first challenge for people who come to Vegas, they're a little bit more in the routine around adult entertainment? Like that's where a lot of the first come from, right? You're like your first strip club, your first club experience, your first picking up an escort, like first time gambling. Like, hey, it happens. I've
that's a
worked on
very that's a
I've,
very millennial.
I've worked on the strip for 10 years. I have nothing is off topic that I haven't seen.
So
So yeah, so a lot of these experiences are towards like the sexualization kind of fantasy. Like, do you think that
no,
like
well,
stifled the
so
idea?
well, there's a whole gambling first section on the app.
Okay.
So obviously, yes, you would definitely swipe on that and go play all the different games and all that. There is a sexual first section
There
on
is.
the app. Yep.
Okay.
This is, you have to be 17 and older. But this version of the app at some point it'll be open to all ages. It will just restrict
That
what
okay.
opens up. Yeah, but there's a sexual first section there. So if you want to explore that, but there's so much more in Las Vegas. So, so since I've been in Las Vegas, I had my first time going to an ice bar. I had my first time with the axe throwing.
Mhm.
You have all kinds of the escape rooms. There's so many other things, the things with the ATVs, the boondoggies, the big like tractors, and like there's a lot of the things. Shooting, you can shoot just about every weapon you can think of in Las Vegas. So there's still a lot of stuff that are outside what you do on the
Mhm.
strip. And I went on the 1st of January, I went and drove a Ferrari for the first time. So you have the exotic racing. There's just so much here to experience and do. So it's more tailored to those things, although all
Mhm.
the other things can also absolutely be part of that.
Yeah, I had to put my tourist brain on for a second because that's working in a nightclub. That's usually what most of the people who come in, they want some sort of like sexual fantasy kind of idea. But Vegas, there is a ton to offer. Like there's a wide variation of museums. There's the Atomic Museum, the Mob Museum, the Titanic Museum,
The
different education sectors, in and outs here where it isn't in most of the country. So there's one of the capitals for food, so you can try hundreds of different food genres.
cuisines and yep. So there's a whole food first on the app, and so it would line you up, and then you could make your entire itinerary right there on the app, get discounts and get different things, and just like knock out and just be on a constant high without having to do
Yeah,
anything
this
drugs.
conversation's opening up my mind, and I'm thinking like, okay, now there's like so many different variations of rooms, so many different hotels, just
You have the
different.
zip lines. I mean, there so much. Yeah, the casinos. The casinos offer so many different variation of entertainment, of gaming. That's not gambling. That's not. That's why people come here, and there is so much. And I spent a little bit of time before we went to shut down talking to tourists that were coming here, and I was really surprised at how unprepared they are when they come here, and they miss out because which I think you should just wander the strip, and but maybe for a couple hours. If that's all you do, then and you're not opening up the doors to all that it has to offer, you're absolutely missing out. So I was like, yeah, the app would absolutely, like, all the different shows. You might never been to a musical, you might never might never been to a burlesque show, it's endless.
Yeah, I think if you partnered with like a concierge service, that would be like a prime spot because yeah, they're always
That was
trying to link people together.
that was part of the plan before COVID hit.
It'll come back. There's like you said, there's so much to do in Vegas, and it's only continuing to grow. Now we have sports teams, so you can add in football, and eventually we'll have basketball, baseball, and then a bunch of surrounding industries that are moving out here as well that I've had a few previous guests talk about. So there is a giant plethora. And something too I noticed when I was going through your profile is the first time you did, at least in Vegas, was that you were on the news at the beginning of the year. You had like a
Yeah.
little talk. Well, how was that experience like?
Well, it's actually not my first time on the news, but that was great. That was a great opportunity to get on and share more about the app.
Mhm.
But and so the first time I was on the news, I had huge expectation. Like the phone was going to ring off the hook and people were going to email me. And at least I knew this go around. Like it's a great way to get exposure and a great thing to leverage to turn around. But it itself being there really does very little. And so it's how you can, it's how you can, you know, re reformat that you were on there to your benefit to open up other doors. And that's the key to being an entrepreneur, is like one thing happened, how can you leverage that to open the next door, and just doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's like a toolbox. It's just another tool you could use there for another situation, as far as just putting some claim to your name.
Yeah. So
Interesting. So, is there any next steps moving forward during the pandemic, or as far as the 365 challenge?
big thing that I'm doing right now is lining up online events. So I'm not done doing new things, and I'm not done introducing people to new things. Like I was saying, I had the tudding last Friday on July 16th. I have Jeremy the magician. So we're going to do some magic tricks. So he's like, bring some cards, some coins, and learn some magic trick. We're going to have a stand-up comedian give a stand-up a stand-up comedy class, food carving. So I'm still like heavy in it. So it's the pivot, right? I have to do it online. Not a problem. I will do it online. But it's getting people out of to still engage, like get out of their slumber and say, yeah, I'm going to spend an hour this week and I'm going to do something I've never done before. Have that experience and have the high from it. And building up the community. It's all about building up the community, continuing with the first time storytelling broadcasts. So that's something that I started because of COVID. So, and it's been amazing. I can't wait to have you on. And I've had
Yes.
over 60 guests so far, and hearing those stories and really see, like, when you hear those stories, you get to understand how first times can have domino effects, how first time, like that one time, can still have a huge impact, leave you with a lesson. We are the summer experiences it also our first time. So if you can run a thread through your life about from your first times, it just wakens you up, and then it makes you realize, yeah, I want a lot more of that moving forward. And yeah, so just continue with all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go onto your show, because what I'm about to talk about, which I'll tell people. So, and a lot of my audience resonates with this as well. As I'm going to be talking about my first music festival experience at EDC, which is here in Vegas, and that was one of the biggest pillars in my life that fell down and led to hundreds of new firsts afterwards. I always say that, like, there's 4 great things that happened in my life for different reasons. Joining football for health reasons when I was younger. I was a bigger kid, joined football, became a big health fanatic. I joined a fraternity in college. That was for social reasons. I got hired at Omnia nightclub for financial reasons, and then going down into the music festival and rave world for spiritual reasons. And from that experience, like I said, there's so many friendships that formed, so many different open opportunities from that situation, that's like a big pillar. And I know a lot of like millennials and the younger generation resonate with that.
Yeah. And for me, like, that's going to be like, I've never had that experience. So when you tell me the story, I get to connect with that experience through your experience and what you get out of it. So it might be, because I might, more than likely, I will never have that experience because I'm not a crowd person. So, but listening to you will give me something from that, right? So my guest today, Mike Alton, he came on, and at least you and I have had this conversation. The majority of my guests I've never talked to ever before. We go live together. We might have a couple minutes for the show, and then bam, we go live together. So that gets interesting. So, when I read Mike, it was like Mike was coming on to share about his first time doing mushrooms, to change like his mental well-being. And I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be interesting. And it said he spent 15 years in jail. I'm like, Ooh. It's like, whoa, okay. And I've never done drugs, obviously the Marine Corps, but I've never had an interest in doing drugs. Now, in the beginning of the conversation with him, like, hey, I'm going to be open-minded to your experience and what you're going to share. Like, no judgment. I'm here to experience your story and what that was like for you, and to learn from it and to grow from it. And that's what we want the listeners to listen to, stories of things you're not familiar with that mindset, because you are going to learn something, and you're going to connect with someone through your differences to your similarity. And the guy was, and then and then I played the first time lightning round with everyone. So it's 10 different first times. And so I asked him if he had ever been in a fashion show. And he's like, yeah, when I was in jail in Mexico. I'm like,
plot twist.
It was just like, he had all kinds of those different, you're like, what? So he told me a little bit more about that. So it's just fascinating, because people are fascinating, and they have stories that, experience that they've had, that they've written off. Like, I guarantee, like, you're in touch with the things that have happened. But my mission is, during the first time lightning round, it's to find something you're like, I had never, and tell a story. Like, I have never told this story. I haven't thought about this in forever. And to understand that it has had a significance in your life, and, reconnect. Like, it's a pleasure for me when I get to reconnect an audience with something that they'd forgotten about. And, and unfortunately, that's what we do with life. Like, we forget where we came from, and we forget to tell those stories. And then we're confused why people don't understand who we are. Well, did you tell people who you are?
It's because we almost forgot who we are ourselves.
Exactly. That's why I say, run the thread through your first times, and you're going to really discover who you are and what's happened, and share it with other people.
Yeah, there's nothing feels better than when your message could get across and you have that sort of intimate wavelength connection with somebody else, where you see them connect the dots, and it just makes you feel great that you could be that person to assist. That's like something I've noticed with my podcast. A lot of people, they end up contacting me after, saying that like they feel more motivated within their own passion project to pursue it, because that's most of the people I'm interviewing are people who are trying to like push innovation forward. And that, like, for you get to have this intimate moment of first times, and you're like vicariously living through them through conversation. So we all have these different purposes, and the only way that we can do that is with somebody else. And so it's a beautiful product to see that happen, before your eyes.
Yeah, and I've had people, say, well, this is my first time sharing this, like allowing themselves to be vulnerable and to share that story. And that's such a place of, privilege, to be there with someone when they're doing that. And while they're telling me the story, we're live for anybody else to listen in and to be in that place with them. So, how do you interact with people when they tell you their stories, and how do you connect with it? And it's all about that growth. And I think with everything that's happening right now, that's so important for us to turn off the noise and say, how can I connect with you? How can I better understand you? And being open-minded to who you are, and telling those stories, especially those first times that we all have in common, that are like the baseline of humanity. And that's one of the things that I do with the first time story prompts, and the coaches are on my team really participate in that. So, and it's great, because it's like, wow, I'm just learning so much about you through just that one really quick story about a first time. And it's every time my jaw just drops, and I'm amazed. And we also do the play along. So I take some screenshots from the app, and it's like, play along. Which way would you swipe? So similar to the first time lightning round. And one of them was mowing the lawn. So I said, like, this is a chore, so mow the lawn. Two of my coaches, grown adults, have never mown a lawn
Really?
before. And I was like, how can that be? And like, to be completely shocked, by that. And it's just like, wow, a fact that I would never, ever found out about them, without putting it out there and asking and say, hey, I want to get to know you. Which way, have you done this before?
Yeah, people definitely will surprise you, and that's something, like you said, that you find over and over again.
Yep.
So I think there was a lot of brand interconnectivity that happened for me during this conversation, and now I'm going to be consciously aware of everything I do throughout the rest of the day as far as first times. And so I'm excited to come onto your show later in the month, as well as be a part of the group, and once we can meet in person, see where everything is pushed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with guests, I've done that with guests. So I know you're mostly in the Las Vegas, but I'm trying to get all 7 continents. I want guests from all 7 continents. And then I've had a guest that a teenager. So it's like my first teenager, and I got interviewed by a teenager. It's like, oh, it's my first time being interviewed by a teenager. And, and then I savor that moment, because it's like, that's cool to me. That means a lot to me. First time I interviewed a couple, first time I was interviewed by a couple. And, it's kind of like I could probably create just a podcast interview, first time board of, oh yeah, let me look for that opportunity. Just again, to realize this is different than what I normally do.
I enjoy that. I always ask 2 questions at the end, same questions to everybody. I know you briefly covered this a little bit, so you'll be able to touch on it a little more. The year is 2030. Where do you envision the 365 first challenge being?
I love that question. 2030, it is a multi-billion-dollar company, and it's in competition with the biggest tech companies out there, but not in competition, working hand in hand. But it has changed the self-development industry. Like, when people look at the self-development industry and they look back on when did things really change, the 365 First Challenge, and it probably is going to get rebranded and renamed, but whatever it turns into people will look back and say that changed the game. It changed self-development, and it changed like how we grow as human being. Like it, yeah, 10 years from now, because where AI is going to be at, yeah, it, like, everyone will be on my platform and will be taking huge, massive step forward, and be like, instead of struggling through the massive change that's going to come with automation, like, they will thrive through the age of automation because of what I'm doing.
Well put. There's going to be millions of brains rewired, and millions of people who are going to be more creative. And last question is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
It hasn't put a stamp on me yet. It hasn't. So yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit. Like, for me, like I said, like New Orleans, like, she put her stamp on me. Like, Las Vegas has not put her stamp on me just yet. I would, when I moved here, I did envision it like to be the biggest tech startup, like for Las Vegas to embrace the fact that I am a tech startup and with a big vision, with a big purpose, and that Las Vegas can be the stepping ground for that. And then in the future, it stays rooted here, because if it doesn't get embraced, like I'll move. Like, I'm not.
You got to be an opportunist at times. You have to
exactly.
Be an
so why go solo? I didn't move. I didn't go to where it could be successful. This time I will. So if Las Vegas does not provide that, then I will go. But I think this is the place for it. And when things go back to normal, I would hope that I break through, and then Las Vegas does embrace what I do. And, so when we talk about Starbucks and the relation with Seattle and, the other tech startup, and like, I'm here and I have a massive vision. So
enjoy that. Any closing remarks, and where can everyone get connected with you and 365?
I would love for everyone to join me on the 365 First Challenge Facebook group. So there's a page, and then there's the group. The group is private, so come join the community there. It's a good place to get started. And then download the app. Just and it's not even a requirement to download the app, but just to engage with the community. When you do something new, use the hashtag, and either I will find you or one of my coaches will find you, and we're going to provide you that support, that encouragement, bring you into the community. So you, if, especially if you feel anxiety and fear and a lot of different emotions around doing new things. So as Jake and I have been talking about this, you're like, it sounds really good, but it's like you're scared. Like, you don't have to go through any of this alone. Like, get engaged with the community and we will get you moving. And then I post the events. So come out on join the 365 First Challenge meetup group where the events are posted. They're all online, the comfort of your own home, and you'll get to spend some more time with me. And I'm always out to make people's experience a really good one. So if you listen to the 365 First podcast, it's the same thing. I share my first time stories, the things that I've learned from them when I've fallen flat on my face. There's the expert advice for your first time series and everybody's first time stories. There's just so much great content and community to be part of. So I invite you all to join. And the way that I always close out my podcast is, get out there and get busy having first time and new experiences wherever and whenever you can.
Boom. Everything, it will be posted in the show notes. And I thank you for coming on. This was very, I don't even want to say eye-opening. I'll say mentally stimulating.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Thank you for having me. And thank you for what you do for Las Vegas.
I appreciate that. I thank all of you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.